Welcome to another episode of the Do Big podcast. In our series, we've been covering all kinds of interesting issues and questions that MSMEs have around various aspects of the business. Today, we're going to be addressing something which is very interesting, which is brand building and customer experience. And we have with us Vineeta Wagh. Vineeta Wagh is the co-founder of Brew Lab, and she's also an independent marketing consultant. She's also a faculty lecturer with Upgrad. Vineeta has more than 12 years of experience doing this, and I love the fact that she hasn't lost her love for both building brands and for storytelling over the last 12 years. She hasn't become jaded, and neither has she become cynical about this entire process. So, Vineeta, absolutely delightful to have you on this podcast and on this episode. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sheetal. Thank you guys for having me here. And I would love to have this conversation. And I'm sure it's going to be a fun.
Okay, great. And so, Vineeta, I'm going to jump straight into the first question. And, you've played many roles in your career, right? 12 years, lots of things that you've done. Can you share three big learnings when it comes to brand building? Because I know when I started brand building, I don't even want to say how many years ago, it was very different from where it is in today's digital age. Just want to get a sense of what are your top three learnings when it comes to brand building.
Sure. I'll resonate more to those days of brand building, and I still believe very strongly that brands are still built on great stories. Of course, there has to be a great product. You can't have a bad product and great storytelling and still think that things will fall in place. But if I have to speak about 3 points, one is brand building till date doesn't happen overnight. It is a consistent effort of telling the same story, defining who you are telling your story to. So while we are in a digital age and everything is fast and you have to come up with ideas every day, the core still remains the same, that you need to stand for something. And it is going to take the difference that is there today and back then, I feel, is it is going to take some time for smaller brands to figure out what their story is. And it is going to take a lot of back and forth and research and understanding the market, because the market is so dynamic right now. It's changing every few days. So figuring out what your story is and what you stand for, that's one very important thing. Second thing is defining, when we say defining target audience, back then we used to have it from a demographic and a psychographic point of view. I think now there are better ways to dive in deeper and have personas, so that when you're telling your story, you're customizing it to the kind of people you are telling it to. And I think we do have those tools and we do have a lot of skills right now to come to that story. That's the second thing. And the third thing is being absolutely mindful to figure out what your product market fit is, especially today when we have so many brands and so many products coming in every day, that I feel the consumers are in a way overwhelmed, at the same time very well informed. So you can't have your way around with anything. You need to have a good product at the core of marketing and at the core of building a business. Because now when you're going out in the market, people are going to read about you, they're going to research about you, they now they know what to read on the labels, how to read it. So you have to be very mindful of the kind of product and the product market fit, that there's actually a need to be there. There needs to be a purpose. So that's very important. These are the three things that I would recommend brands to do, and especially startups, because it's now that you're getting into business, you have to be sure where you are heading, or it is very easy to get lost as a brand.
So that's quite fascinating because you said brand building takes a long time.
Yes.
And in today's day and age where everything is about here and now and ROI and not spending enough money, it's about measurement. Are you delivering all of that? So in the good old days, one took the time to build a brand.
Yes.
But in today's day and age, when there is so much pressure around deliverables more than anything else, and measuring brand and what it stands for is a little difficult. How do you then tackle this whole long-term perspective over a short term view, which is the here and now view, which a lot of brands and startups and even young entrepreneurs keep pushing for.
Yeah, I think the answer has to come from the founder. I work with so many founders and I have seen so many people. I've seen big organizations, I've seen medium organizations. Now I work with startups. I think it is very essential for the founder to understand how, like, the process of building a brand is slow one, and you need to have that vision, right? Because if the leadership doesn't have that vision, and I understand there's a lot of investor pressure. Like, if you talk to entrepreneurs and if you talk to leaders, you will hear a lot about investors pressures, ROI. But see, if you look from a consumer point of view, we don't care about all those things, right? So we are just going to see which is the product which has great story, what is selling, what is the credibility, what is the quality, right? So it essentially lies with the founder to build that vision for the brand. Understand that you might, if you're chasing numbers and if you're chasing sales, you can do it through digital marketing, growth marketing, performance marketing. But if your brand is not built, and I have been saying this, and a lot of people have, I feel, now understood that performance marketing is great. You need it for your brand, but it can't go sustainably for a very long period of time if you don't have a great story. You might have sales in the initial few days, months. It is going to reach a stagnation at some point of time, because at the end of the day, it's how much money you put and how much eyeballs you're getting and how much sales you're getting. There might not be a great story. There might not be a great credibility you're building if you're just running behind numbers and the other things like customer experience, building credibility, having a connection with your customers, building that community, having a purpose as a brand, having omni channel. So there are so many other things also that are there in the picture that need to fit in properly for you to build a brand in a holistic manner. And I think that comes from a vision of a founder.
And how do you think brand building can help MSMEs? And one big thing, and I know this is a question asked of me even on the research that I do in the past, it has been asked of me when I've played the role of marketing, branding consultant, or being a marketer myself. Can brands be built on small budgets? Because everyone thinks it needs a multi-crore budget to build a
Mm.
brand. So
So I'll tell you one very classic situation that most of the time marketers are stuck with, or even the founders. थोड़ा बजट है, सेल्स भी चाहिए, marketing भी करनी है, brand building भी करनी है. Now, um, traditionally, and I'm sure you'll agree, brand building and marketing is only looked at as a money sucking team. So I feel over the time, brand building has, the process might have changed a little bit, the importance hasn't. If you have just, let's say, 10 lakh or 15 lakh, whether you put it in building a great brand, which is, creating awareness, having great brand identity, or should you just put it in digital performance marketing? And that is the catch 22 situation always with founders and marketers. And that's where marketers are also judged for that. Okay, how are you going to make money out of this small budget? But I think it has to be, with social media coming in, the brand building ways have changed. And I think, yes, the answer is yes, brands can still be built on a smaller budget. You just have to be very strategic about it. If you look at these brands like, let's say, Whole Truth Food, the brand initially was built with, even if I'm not a direct consumer of Whole Truth Food, till now, I feel I follow their content so religiously, because that brand is built consistently through great, credible content. That could be one way, and purely through, let's say, social media. So, with social media coming in, with different format of contents coming in, there are different ways you can build a brand in smaller budgets while not harming your digital marketing budget as well. It's just that you have, brands have to be brave enough to take that decision of, okay, fine, I'm going to spend a little bit on, digital, and I'm going to spend consistently little bit over time on brand building. Because you might have a great brand story which you have not figured out yourself and you have not put it out there. So I might buy your product, but I might not know as a consumer. I might buy it just because, okay, there's a price drop, there is a sale, or I just want to try it. But I might not be your loyal customer throughout the lifetime because I don't know what you stand for. And I think as even Gen Zs today, if you look at them, and they are the new target audience for a lot of brands, they are also being very aware of what kind of brands they are investing in. They are very aware of purpose driven brands. So all this is going to matter, and you need to figure out your way of being or telling the story in a great way, and also making sure that you are present in public through digital marketing.
Um, okay. And typically, there's always this theme of how do I leverage technology or how do I leverage new innovations to create an engaging brand story, which resonates with the target audience. And you very truly said that, in the good old days, you did user personas, but they were far more, how should I say, they were far wider in their definition than the way user personas are crafted today. So I'm just trying to understand how can SMEs leverage technology, to create and engage on a brand story that resonates with their target audience.
I think more than technology, if you just step back, it is about knowing your customers well. And I think the benefit that smaller brands have is they can have a direct connection with their consumers, unlike the bigger brands where I can't talk to, let's say, so many consumer or the consumer base that I have. As a small brand, even if you have, like, let's say 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 customers, how much ever, you can talk to a significant amount of people to understand what exactly they are looking for. Why did they buy the product? What is the I was working with this one spice brand, and we realized that there was this one particular spice that we were advertising. We were thinking of it just from one point of view. अच्छा ये spice है, ये इसके लिए use होगा. But when we spoke to customers, we realized, oh, they're using it for their cocktails also, their mocktails also. And you would not think of a spice or seasoning from that point of view because you're also trained to think a similar way. But you would be surprised at the different ways your consumers would be using your product, the different emotions that gets evoked in your consumer while using your product, and that can give you so much data and so much insight into what are the different stories that we undertake. For example, I can tell you, we were working on a maternity brand. It is yet to launch, but it is into the organic space. And if you look at the maternity wear category in India today, it's very boring. It is not flattering. Women are already so we when we spoke to across 30-35 women who fit into our character sketch of our target audience, we realize that they have so much going on in their mind in terms of their emotions and in terms of their struggle during that period. Clothing is the last thing that they
They
want,
worry
yeah,
about.
worry about, and they don't want that particular thing to hamper their confidence furthermore, right? And just
Mm.
Google maternity wear in India, you won't find anything that's flattering, that builds confidence in you. So we're like, okay, that space is very empty, and women really want, because you're talking about, these progressive women working who want to look a certain way, who want to believe that, they want to carry themselves in a certain way. So when we spoke to them, we realized that, oh my God, this space is completely empty. Not a lot of brands are working in that segment. So when you speak to your customers, you can come, and again, smaller brands have that advantage to go back to their customers and speak to them. And you will come back with so many stories. And then it is just about putting those stories beautifully out there through different technology, through different platforms, through different formats. WhatsApp marketing, the entire chatbots that are coming in. The technologies are going to keep coming, and you just have to adapt to them. But I think, again, the core remains the same. If you want great stories, you have to talk one on one to your customers, and you will know, you'll come up with things that you haven't even thought of as a marketing team or as founders for your brand.
Vineeta, I'm a researcher and I run a qualitative research company. And I
Exactly.
keep telling the world, customer first, you really don't know how your customer's using your product
Exactly.
till you go out there and ask them. I mean, it's happened to me so many times. You think that they've bought your product for a particular reason, but they've bought it for something completely different.
Yeah.
I keep telling students I teach, saying that there is a reason why one needs to research consumers and not just numbers research. It's about having,
That
like you said, these
conversation.
conversations
Yes.
to
Yes.
understand what really is triggering off
Yes.
that purchase. And it's quite fascinating because if you do it across a life cycle or if you do it across the product buying cycle, you land up with such interesting moments of truth which you'd never planned
Exactly.
in your communication, right?
Exactly.
That absolutely resonates with me.
And I think that is one thing that these brands are sort of missing out on, because, the pressure, sab kuch abhi karna hai, everything has to go out right now, everything has to be done right now. While all that can happen, I think before you start a brand or while you are thinking of an idea, it's very, very important to understand that your idea needs to be checked first with the consumer, not with what you believe or what's there on the internet in terms of the primary research or anything. That's great to have, but I think diving deeper and understanding what's triggering a purchase, you will be really fascinated by the answers and surprised by the kind of data you get after talking.
So true. I was speaking to somebody on the startup community, and I said one of the big questions that most founders must honestly answer to themselves is, does my product or my service have a role to play in my consumer's life?
Sure.
If you don't answer that question and you don't have a rock solid answer to that one,
Yeah.
then you may have the best technology, you may be the brightest young kid around in the universe, but because you're not addressing a concern or a
Yeah.
need or something that the consumer says, hey, I must have this. Without this, my life can't.
Again, it comes back to so many brands. Like, if you spend, I mean, on an average, people are spending 2.5 hours on Instagram. I'm sure maybe the younger generation look at
Correct.
the content they're bombarded with every day. These days, I remember the message, I don't remember the brand, because there's so much
Right.
happening on Instagram. I'm like, oh, I know the message was strong, but I don't remember the who was a person or which brand, because so much happening. So it's very important to be consistently present, and to do that, you need to have some really convincing stories put out there. And I'm sure, as a
Yeah.
researcher, you would have gone through some really great insights that you wouldn't have thought.
Oh, absolutely. Some amazing, fascinating things that come up when you really start talking to consumers, and very often breaks everything that you had ever thought was the way you should think, right? It just shatters everything, and you're saying, okay, I have to start afresh. And it's fascinating. And then you'll end up with a product and a service which is absolutely
Yeah,
brilliant at times because you've now gone back and done all of the fixes that you had to do. Um, while I get all of this, I just want to understand when you speak about the passion to help new age brands navigate the digital landscape, how can SMEs implement a customer centric approach in their business? So I know research is one part of it, but how do you make that an ingrained process within the system rather than I did it when I started and now I'm done? How does it work?
so consistent connection is the key for the smaller brands for this. Access to consumers is easy these days. And I think if you are a purpose driven brand and if you have the right kind of people in your team, it's very easy to talk to your consumers and be constantly in touch with them, not annoyingly, but yeah,
Hmm.
constantly in touch with them, to understand what they are feeling about your product, about your service, right? Today, the brand building with the help of community, with the help of conversation, has increased. So today it's very easy to be in touch with your consumers. If you have the right kind of people, you can be constantly in touch with your consumers, not annoyingly, and giving them personalized experiences. through your brand or as a brand, because that's how people are going to remember you, that's how consumers are going to remember you. There is enough research and data out there that says that if you as a brand are more personalized in terms of not just your product but your content, your messaging, the way you reach out to people, it is going to have a lasting impact on your customers. That's one. Second thing, building brands through community has become all time big right now. So I am with a brand, helping a brand build its mental health community, right? And trust me, when we build that community on WhatsApp, I was so amazed to see that people have so much to talk about. People have so much trauma, and people want to just have people around to speak about. Now, are we selling products there? No, we're absolutely not selling. That's a community purely built to have conversations. Now, when you have something so purpose driven, community based, where you're not selling anything, I wouldn't even call it a support group, but just a group where people can speak their heart out. And this is started by a brand which is in the space of creativity and art for mental health, right? So there is a purpose, there is a great product. The name of the brand is Twillo. You should check it out. And then you have this community which remembers the brand more for the kind of things that they are doing. So being in constant touch and helping your consumers in some or the other way, where you're not selling anything, but you're giving them an experience which they can't forget. Now, this is an example of personalized experience, right? So that's another way where people remember the brand. Third thing is, I last 1 month I've been in the US, and I'm just looking out for products and brands and how people shop here. The loyalty and the reward, option here for brands, for bigger brands, is so great, because I'm seeing everyone going to a particular brand again and again because their loyalty and reward program is great, which I haven't seen so much being used in our, I wouldn't say in our country, but I haven't seen so many brands leveraging that. Some brands are doing that, but some brands are still trying to struggle. But in the beginning, if you have a smaller set of customers and if you can identify a great loyalty or reward program that can help you with customer retention, it is just easier for you to sort of build a connection with your customer at the initial phase and make sure that they stay with you for a long time. So that becomes another way to make sure that your customers are with you. So focusing on customer retention, especially when your base is small, having that conversation with your customers every now and then to make sure that you're taking in the feedback. You're not just connecting with them, you're taking in the feedback, you're making sure your product changes, and then building a community around it and building strong conversations around your brand, around your brand ethos, what your brand believes in, I think is a great way to pull customers and to make sure that you retain them in some or the other.
Yes, it's very fascinating about this whole loyalty piece, right? Even there, I think there's a massive change that brands need to bring in mindset, right? Earlier, it was about how is my customer loyal to me or not? I think the mindset needs to be, have I done enough to earn
Absolutely.
that loyalty, right?
Absolutely.
Because what tends to happen is people just assume, oh, if I give them points and if I do this, that's enough. They should be happy and give me their loyalty. But there are so many options and there is so much that is happening in the world. And I think brands need to go back and say, have I done enough to earn that loyalty or am I not doing enough to earn that loyalty? Because today it's really about you having to, it's exactly like respect used to happen at one point in time. You respected someone because they were your elders. Today,
Yes,
kids will tell you,
absolutely.
especially Gen Z will tell you, have you earned my respect? Just because you're older doesn't mean I will by default
Absolutely.
respect you,
That's a
right?
bang on
And I think,
example, I feel. Yes.
and that's exactly what consumers are today saying. What have you done to earn my loyalty?
Yeah.
Why should I give it to you?
Yes.
It's not just about points. And I think that's one of the key reasons why, till we don't get out of the transactional space of CRM programs and loyalty, we will not see the change. It's
Yeah.
really what are you aligned to their thoughts and interests?
Yeah.
I mean, a Harley Davidson has done so many things to have the cult status that it has, right?
Of course.
It wasn't just about every time you buy a Harley, you're going to get X number of points and therefore you can buy gear, right?
Yeah.
It isn't that.
Yeah.
And I think that's the mental shift that I think sometimes brands struggle with in terms of saying, how do I earn loyalty, not
Yeah.
how do I get loyalty?
And you
Uh,
know what? It is especially very tricky and very difficult now, because if I ask you which is the last brand that you remember you are absolutely loyal to, and if I talk about all the new brands that have come in last maybe 5, 8, 10 years, there probably would be maybe one or two that you remember or you think of, or maybe
yeah,
none, for all that you know. So it's so difficult. And back in the day, we were so loyal to certain, even when it came to personal care, to food, to all the shampoos and the kind of products we were using, the fashion, clothing, everything. There was a lot of brands that we were loyal to. Right now, loyalty earning has become very difficult. So brands have to put in a lot more effort, like you rightly said, not just in transactional sense, but if you're listening to your customer, if you're being there, if you're understanding their needs, if you are changing according to what they need. One very classic example, it's of course a legendary brand, and a lot of us have heard about the case study for sure, is the brand Stanley, right? And recently I did a piece on it where the brand has been there for 100 years and never thought of catering to women. It was a
right.
brand which was like macho and, sturdy and strong, made for men who are adventurous. And until like three women came into picture and realized that this is a great product, and they have a community of women who showed interest in their product. And then the brand, which never advertised to women, never thought of having women as their target audience, created an entire line of product just for women, because they realized, okay, there is a great demand. And a brand has changed its strategy after so many years, that okay, I can pivot, I can tweak. And I think that flexibility brands need to have, and it'll only happen if you keep listening to your customers, if you keep listening to what the need is of the market, right? And you have to be that slightly flexible, especially in the initial time. So while yes, your brand should have a story, your brand should stand for something, you should be identifying your niche, I think it can't be from day one. It has to be going
Mm.
out, understanding, course correcting, trial and error. And you might come to that maybe after a few months or maybe after a year also. But you have to be that flexible to say that, okay, I'm going to build a brand that is consumer centric. And that can only happen if I talk to my consumer, if I talk to them on a deeper level and understand the insights that are there in the market.
Absolutely. I always have a credit card example on customer centricity. And I keep saying that, the world has changed where more and more women are owning credit cards today and, are transacting using credit cards and other things. But the credit card programs still remain very, very male centric,
Yes.
right? So try redeeming your credit card points. You never find anything for women other than, of course, gift vouchers, which they think is the only thing women want in life. So I find that so amusing when I'm like,
Yeah.
women have changed, guys, wake up,
Yeah.
smell the coffee. But so be it. So moving to the next one, right? Digital transformation, while it has aided the whole brand building process and has aided the marketing process, has also created a lot of changes from the consumer point of view, right?
Yes.
The consumer expectations are changing really, really rapidly. And what is happening is also that if I get extremely good, let's say UI UX from one brand, that becomes my expectation across board. It's not about whether you can afford it, can't afford it, whether you're a big brand or a small brand, whatever, right? So if I experience something which I think is absolutely a quality standard in one particular area, then I start saying, hey, I should get the same in others too. How should SMEs adapt to meet these new demands?
So things are very easy these days, right? If one brand can achieve it, especially when you talk about UI, UX, or packaging, or how your brand looks, I don't think mediocrity is going to work there anymore. because one, your audience is, like I said, very well informed. They're not stupid. You can't fool them. So if I'm seeing one brand for something, I am checking 10 other brands doing the same thing, right? Depending on what category you are playing, which is an impulse buy or something that is more thought through. For example, personal care, I would never buy from a brand that I don't know or I don't feel like is coming across very sensible or knowledgeable or don't know what they are talking about. I'll never buy a brand. I never buy a product from a brand like that. And I think consumers are becoming like that, where they are researching. They're going to 10 different marketplaces, checking what people are saying or what works, what doesn't work for a product. At the same time, the whole thing of, okay, if I'm owning this product, this is an extension of my personality. So I need to be either proud of owning it, or it has to have some sort of show of worthiness. And more importantly, it needs to fit in what I need, right? So when it comes to basic things like your website, your packaging, your brand logo, your colors, I think these are non-negotiables in building a brand. It's not very expensive these days, vis-a-vis back then when you had to spend lakhs of rupees in getting logo and brand identity made. Now there are a lot of options. If you don't have that much of a budget, there are ways in which you can work with freelancers, you can work with smaller boutique agencies, but you need that eye for things when it comes to packaging or whether it comes to UI UX. If your brand is, let's say, D2C brand, your website experience cannot be bad. You're like, you
Correct.
have to monitor things like how many people are coming on your website, where are they spending more time, what are they consuming. For example, a lot of brands I have seen have like, they are great looking, but their checkout experience is so bad, right? That I immediately drop in there. Like I'm like, I don't want to fill in these details again and again and give you the same thing. I don't want to waste my time because faster, like everything is faster. For example, customer care. I like there are brands which do not have like a direct line to the customer care, or there is no way that I can talk to people. It becomes very difficult. So even after sales for brands have become so important. That is one of the biggest things in customer retention. So there are small things, and actually a list of things that come goes under the non-negotiable when it comes to building brands, and it's very easy to do these days. So even if it takes a little bit of time, brands need to spend that much time to build that, to build an identity, to build a story. Your identity is aligned to your story. Your product marketing has become big, right? Initially it was brand and brand story. Now you have brand story, you have product stories. Every product has a story, and how you tell that story beautifully makes a difference, right? I do give an example of Whole Truth Food. Yes, one. Second is also, I think, 82 East as a personal care brand. Of course, the Deepika Padukone is there, so people know that brand. But if you just leave that part aside, I feel the way the stories are being told for every product and the niche that has been found in terms of how personal care products and mental health can be, tied up together. No one thought of it like that before. While there are so many brands, but this brand has owned that niche so well. So it becomes very important for brands to make sure that these things are done not in a mediocre way. You have to understand that you can't fool your customers, and you have to be at a certain level as a brand, especially the premium brands. I mean, the brands which are massy, I feel, still can have their way out, but if you are in a premium segment, you can't ignore these things like your identity, your website experience, your packaging, your customer experience, your after sales service. This has to be the core of your brand.
So, to conclusion, I'm going to ask you this as my final question. If an MSME or an SME is on their journey to building brands and to creating amazing customer experiences in this entire digital space, what would your one or two pieces of advice be? How should they start off? What should they look at for sure?
One is basically the way we started this conversation. Please go back and understand your product market fit and your consumers. Whatever you're building, Do your customers actually need it? Is there any way to pivot the entire product basis what your customers need? That's one thing that's very important. And especially for someone who's just about to start the business, when brands are in the middle of the journey and then they have to make changes, it's slightly difficult. But someone who's starting the business has that time and can put that much effort in understanding that will help them long term. So that's very important, because you're looking at your brand not for like 3 months, 6 months, 3 years, 5 years, looking at building a brand over time. And if you do this study at the very beginning, it's going to help you build a very consistent and impactful brand. That's one. Second thing, content. I feel as a for brands which don't have a lot of budget, you can still build a great brand through content, organic and inorganic, I would feel. Because I have seen so many small brands that people are using only because, they have come across as a great brand with great knowledge, authority, and of course, good looking brands which have great brand identity, great story, and stuff like that. So you can leverage content to build your brand. And content, the way we used to look at it, marketers would know there are content pillars. Okay, you have to build content under these 3, 4, 5 pillars. But I think one of the interesting ways that I think I have figured out how to build content is what you want your customers to feel after they see your content. What is the feeling that you want to leave them with? And those feelings can be multiple, right? You want to make them feel empowered. You want to make them feel that they have learned something new. You want to make them feel that they are not alone. Or you want to make them feel that they are beautiful, or they are healthy, or they are fit, or whatever. So I think people need to start looking at content in terms of how they're making their consumers feel in order to build a connection and build a brand. So if we do that little change in our content strategy, that's going to help brands a long way.
Great, Vineeta. Thank you so much. I know you're doing this conversation with me from many, many miles away from India. So thank you once again for joining me on this. I'm sure this is going to set a lot of MSMEs on the right path to their brand building journey. And thank you so much for sharing all of this with us. It was an absolute pleasure having you on the Do Big podcast. And we hope that we can bring you in again sometime soon.
Thank you so much, Sheetal. It was lovely having this conversation. And it's always great to have someone across the table who understands and can contribute so much to what you are saying. It was an insightful conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Do Big podcast, a podcast that is dedicated to providing insights, strategies, and success stories of smart digital solutions for SMEs. We believe that behind every successful business, there's a strong foundation of reliable and secure technology, be it digital connectivity, cloud infra, cloud apps, collaboration tools, or cybersecurity solutions. In a rapidly evolving digital world where technology is key to progress, Tata Tele Business Services stands at the forefront of digital transformation of SMEs. Tata Tele Business Services, with their extensive experience and commitment to empowering businesses, understands the unique needs of SMEs. Whether it's scalable connectivity, robust communication tools, or tailored ICT solutions, Tata Tele Business Services is here to propel your business forward. Tata Tele Business Services is synonymous with innovation, reliability, and transformative solutions. So, if you're ready to take your organization to new heights of success, we encourage you to explore the transformative possibilities that Tata Tele Business Services has to offer. Our contact details are in the description below. Remember, we're available on all major podcast platforms. So if you enjoyed today's conversation, subscribe to our podcast for future episodes, which we promise will be packed with equally valuable insights on questions entrepreneurs face as they digitize and scale businesses with the help of technology. Don't forget to rate and review our podcast, as well as share it with peers, colleagues, and other entrepreneurs like yourself who will benefit from listening to it. Thank you for listening to us, and until the next time, keep embracing technology and may your business thrive in the digital era.